Hello, my name is Johanna. I'm from Invenire, and today we're talking about food citizenship and what is it actually like activating your food citizenship. And we at Invenire, we have a project going on right now on the Åland Islands here in Finland, where we focus on the local food system and nutrient circulation, and also activating and empowering food citizenship. And to make it a bit more interesting and fun and also tangible, we've devised a kind of a training program, almost like you would have a physical training program. But this is for food citizenship, and it contains different kinds of actions to actually exercise and activate your food citizenship. And we've been lucky enough to be able to team up with a local writer and journalist, Fredrik Rosenqvist, and he's been kind enough to agree to be our guinea pig for almost a year in this training program, which is quite a big commitment. And today I actually have Frederick here with me. So welcome, Frederick.
Thanks, Johanna.
Well, if we start with sort of talking about how's it been generally, you're now about almost 1/3 into your food citizenship training program. So how's the experience been for you so far?
It's been good. At the moment, I'm I'm in the middle of my vegan challenge, so my thoughts and my energy is very directed at the current challenge, which is quite difficult. Eating as a vegan. So right now I'm in a kind of a challenging phase, but so far, if you pack all the 3 months together, it's been fun and fairly easy for the most of the time, but yeah, a bit challenging at the moment.
Okay. What's been the most difficult thing, and what's been the easiest thing that you've done so far in these actions or exercises that we've thrown your way?
Well, the most challenging thing is as I said, eating as a vegan. It's I mean, it's difficult when you're not a vegan, thinking about all the things that are non-vegan. I mean, honey and milk and eggs and everything. So cheese and so forth. So it's been challenging finding things to eat. Easy bits, I think. I was surprised how much local fish and how much local meat is available on Åland, because one of the challenges was living as a axgan, eating only Åland produce, and also eating mostly Åland fish and Åland meat. And Åland is a very small place. Only 30,000 people live here, and it's an island. And you would imagine that the supply of local food is quite small, but it's a bit the opposite. I mean, especially meat and the dairy products and fish. We have a lot of them. So it was a bit easier being an ex-gone even in February than I thought it would be. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's actually, has it been a surprise for you? Did you, before this challenge, did you kind of pay attention to how much of your food was from local origin and how much was coming from somewhere else, or was this a surprise for you that you?
Yeah, it was. I think most people in Åland try to pay attention to how much local food they eat, because we're very patriotic and we like to eat local products. But it takes some effort. For example, local milk and cheese and local meat, everybody eats that. But it takes some effort to find that there's also local flour. I mean, wheat flour and local oats and so forth. And there is a conception, I think, especially among people who are not necessarily from Åland, but come here occasionally, that it is so difficult to find local fish and local meat here. I remember reading what is it called, a column in a newspaper written by a journalist from, I think it's from Helsinki, and he lamented about how difficult it was to find lamb on Åland to eat in the supermarkets. And there is a general conception that it's impossible to find local fish and local lamb or other meats, but I think it's untrue. But it takes some effort because it might not be available 24 hours a day in every supermarket. So you have to perhaps know some people and know where to find it. But I think people underestimate the supply of local food here generally.
And that's a bit surprising, I think, what you say about the local fish and the local lamb, because you have your own breed of lamb over there on Åland, and also when it comes to fish, approximately half of all the fish that is farmed in Finland comes from Åland. So, and when I go, I live in mainland Finland, so when I go to my closest supermarket and go to the fish counter and look at the rainbow trout there, it comes from Åland. So that sounds a bit surprising to me, that it's difficult to find locally, or that you kind of have to know.
Yeah, but there are, because there are some weaknesses in the food system here. For example, the fish that is farmed here, you can find Åland fish in your supermarket in Helsinki or Turku, but you can't find it on Åland because it's mostly farmed quite close to Finland and it's exported directly there. So I found that the local rainbow trout here is excellent. I mean, the one that is farmed, but it's currently, I don't think it's sold in the local supermarkets on Åland, just in Finland. So there are some challenges.
That's quite surprising to me. Well, how's it been? You already mentioned that you're now in the middle or on the home stretch of the vegan challenge, shall we say so? But you've kind of had a protein series going on with meat and local fish and everything, and you mentioned that it was easy to get a hold of, or well, not easy, but that there is local meat, there is local fish. But how was it with local plant-based proteins, that you kind of had to really go looking for it to find it, didn't you?
Yeah, it's been a bit of an eye-opener. I imagine that the supply of local plant-based proteins would have been greater. I mean, if we talk about Finnish plant-based protein or Åland, but it's been quite difficult to find. And also the labeling on these kind of products is, I mean, it rarely states where the protein comes from. If we, for example, buy a plant-based, like it's supposed to be minced meat, but it's made of perhaps soybeans or peas. It says that the minced is perhaps produced in Sweden, but it doesn't say where the actual peas or the soybeans come from. You have to like research a lot to find that out. And even if you buy lentils, sometimes it doesn't say where the lentils come from on the package. It's like I was amazed, because everything else that you buy, meat or wine or beer or whatever, it always says where it comes from. So that's a bit surprising. And it was also surprising to me that the number of different plant-based proteins that we can grow here aren't that large. I mean, there aren't that many beans or types of peas or lentils that like it this far north, that perhaps we have a comparative advantage in growing grass, which humans so far can't eat, but cows like a lot. So it's been like an eye-opener to me that, okay, perhaps there's a reasonable explanation to why we have so much meat on Åland, but why we don't have plant-based protein, because we have a quite comparative advantage in producing meat. But also that I found that there are some plant-based proteins that we can produce. For example, peas and what do they call in English? Fava beans, perhaps. Åkerbönor in Swedish. Yeah. And they are grown here, but they are to 99.99% used for animal food.
Mm-hmm.
And we can eat them. They are tasty, but it's not happening today. You can't go into an Åland supermarket and buy a plant-based burger made from fava beans or peas. It's impossible. You buy a plant-based burger imported from the US made from peas. You can't buy a local plant-based burger. So yeah, I think there's lots of difficulties in getting hold of plant-based protein, but lots of opportunities to expanding the production as well.
Yeah, exactly. That was exactly what I was thinking, that there's kind of a gap there. So clearly missing, and it seems to be more difficult to be vegan. Like you have to actually find out about things a lot more and research things a lot more and perhaps
a lot of preparation involved in being vegan as well, because I don't like this. When you buy these processed products, like for example, ready-made burgers and things, I want to have like start from the beginning. Buy the raw materials like peas and lentils, but then you have to prepare a lot because you have to soak them for maybe 12, 24 hours sometimes, and you have to cook them for a long time. It's not like buying minced meat in the store where you can just make your meal in 10 minutes. So yeah, it takes some effort being vegan, which I'm sure all the people who are vegan know.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting. Has something else been, this was the kind of the protein series that you've been doing now for several weeks, but before that you did exercises with biodegradable waste, sorting your waste, and living as an oxgon, like you already mentioned, that you tried to get as much of your diet from local resources as possible. But was something, we already talked about the oxgon thing, but was something surprising with the biodegradable waste exercise that you did to begin with?
Well, I was surprised on the manner which we waste our waste. The biodegradable waste is not being put to use in Åland at all. We have like a very we separate our garbage on Åland, where the bio waste ends up in a container and is being picked up by the municipal company. And me, I was of the impression that this is then being made to soil and put to good use further down the line. But no, it's more or less ends up on a place in the countryside where it's more or less lays rotting for and being not much of use because of the high plastic content. So it was a little bit disheartening to know that the biowaste in Åland is not being put to good use, and that we could do so much more. And at the moment, it's better alternative for me to try to take care of my biowaste myself in a compost in my own house, because then it's the impact on the environment is less damaging. So,
okay.
And I also noticed saw something in the Oxgon challenge. I mentioned earlier that the supply is very good, meat and flour and so forth. But I also thought about it's very fragile at the moment, because we have one dairy producer, more or less, one large dairy producer. We have one, what is it called? Not meat processor, butcher. All the animals go to die in the same place in Åland. We have one dog. We have one mill on Åland that makes flour. So we have like these three companies that are not, very profitable and not very resilient. So if one of them goes away, this possibility of being an Oxgon disappears more or less. We don't have like this OCR, which make their own. If they shut down, we have a very different reality. So these companies that take these raw materials and make something edible out of them, we really need them. Otherwise, we're in big trouble. So, and there's just one of them, one each. So
yeah, so it's kind of. Yeah, so it's kind of like being such a small society. I think you have quite a diverse food system, like you mentioned. You have meat production, milk production, all of that. You have all of it, but at the same time, it's quite vulnerable, being that it's like you mentioned, only one of each. So if you lose,
and it's so interconnected.
Something.
So if you take one away, the rest of the system ends up with severe problems. So especially in these times when everything is like moving, it's think about what will happen. So.
Yeah. Well, now that you mentioned these times, so when we are recording this is April, so we're now in the middle of the corona epidemic. So that probably kind of highlights to many of us how our food system is actually quite global. Many of the things that we have or we eat come from all around the world, and if something happens in India or China, it has an effect on us here. And that's kind of the way I see it, that it probably puts a bit more emphasis on kind of putting focus on maintaining a strong local food system as well, like you now have there. But being that it's also vulnerable, it kind of, to me, it feels like it's something that really should be taken care of or cherished or something like that. But
because when you go to the supermarket now, there's a lot of products that you can't find anymore. For example, I mean, the classic example is toilet paper, but there's also other things like certain canned tomatoes from Italy, or dry yeast, and they all have one thing in common: they're imported. The local supply of meat and fish and flour and cheese and milk and everything is like very robust. I mean, we won't run out of meat or fish or milk anytime soon. So that's very comforting.
That's a good thing to know, that you've got the basics covered. But this is an interesting, while it, of course, this is a very serious thing and very sort of tragic in many sense, but it's probably also eye-opening to many of us, to actually kind of make it more visible how the food system works, and what's coming locally and what's coming from somewhere else, and where the production is robust and where it's more vulnerable. So it's actually quite interesting.
But then the food system in Åland is vulnerable in the sense that it's very export dependent as well. We're so few that we have to export our milk and meat and onions and apples and everything. So at the moment, the milk and cheese production has to be scaled down, because they're a big supplier to the ferries and cruise ships, which currently are standing still, and they're also big suppliers to restaurants, and which are at the moment closed. So
it's interesting times that we're living. Let's see how things will turn out, but certainly it's interesting. Well, then, what about how have people reacted? Because you've been writing about your experiences in the blog, and you've actually been doing YouTube videos and Facebook posts and everything. So you've been talking about your experiences with the training program. So what's the reaction been? Are people interested? Do they want to join you, or how's the reaction been? Or has there been a reaction?
Yes, there has been a reaction. I think we're a bit from creating a mass movement of food citizens. We have a way to go, but people are interested, and they comment, and they have questions. I think so far most of the questions have been about Axgan products. I mean, local products. What can you find? How can you use them? And I think it reflects the general interest of Åland people, that people are very patriotic, and they like eating local foods, and they're very interested in those sorts of things. So I think, so far the questions have been more about how is it possible to live as an Axgan? Is it possible? What do you eat, and so forth. So and especially also when I commenced my vegan challenge, most of the questions were, okay, how can you find Åland vegan products? So there's like a lot of enthusiasm for these Axgan products, and So
okay, so that's clearly something that's on people's minds, the sort of local food system and local raw materials. And
and my reflection is that it's like we are very interested in food in this day of age. I mean, we're all food citizens in a way, but we have quite different goals and what we want to accomplish with our food citizens. I mean, we have vegetarians and vegans, and they want to change the food system in a way that we produce more vegetables and plant-based proteins. And we have these Axgan, not maniacs, but I mean people who really like are fired up about these local products, which want to influence the food system in a way that we produce more ourselves on Åland. And we have people worried about climate change that want to change the food system in a way that has a less negative effect on climate. And we have all these people who are very interested in tasty food and want to experiment and find new things that like, oh, there's this bean on Åland, perhaps you can make something tasty of that. So it's like there's a gigantic interest for food and food system, but it's like everybody's going in different directions, and I feel like sometimes the energy and the will is there, but the knowledge perhaps sometimes is lacking, and that's not very surprising because it's a quite difficult topic that I found. I mean, one thing I have realized so far that there's a lot of knowledge involved in shaping the food system and being a food citizen. I mean, the main part of the journey for me is learning things, acquiring knowledge, how things work. And so it's like my body is not tired from the training program, but my head is. There's so much information going in, and I learn so many things. All I learned that I actually know very little. Then have to start from the beginning. So for me, it's like this food system journey is a lot about learning. I think realizing we need knowledge, we need sort of a ability to innovate and be creative and have imagination to shape the food system, because I think the will is there already, but we have to have some tools for channeling this will and this energy in the right direction and not running around like headless chickens. So.
Yeah, that sounds interesting, because I mean, and that's of course why we devised the training program, because the way we see food citizenship, and this is not scientific, this is sort of coming from based from our previous experience. We kind of think that, okay, well, food citizenship is, like you said, people are looking at things from different angles and coming from different motivations, and that's kind of how we see it as well. That we have these what we call the smart areas that you can look at, for instance, the smart origin, and you can pay attention to, well, where does the food come from? Who made it? How is it made? Is it local? Is it exported, imported, whatever? So that's one thing that you can look at. And then you can think about the sustainability impacts from all the various angles. Of course, sustainability is such a huge concept, and it has different angles as well. So that's one thing. And then there's, of course, the, kind of putting the focus on yourself and how you consume and how you use the product. So what do you do in your own kitchen, and how do you store things, and how do you prevent food waste, and how do you then process when you get leftovers or whatever that you cannot utilize anymore, that they end up in the waste, and how do you process that, and do you do that yourself, or does the municipality take care of that, or all of that? And then also what you kind of mentioned, the learning part, that's also something that we see being one smart area of food citizenship is kind of smart identity, that you actually start thinking about the things and learning about the things, and seeing that there's quite a broad, quite a few angles and perspectives that you can actually look at things from. So it sounds like you're well on your way in your training program.
Yeah, it feels like I've been taking strides, and I think this need for knowledge doesn't just apply to consumers or food citizens. It also applies to producers because they don't even have all the answers. When I talk to farmers about growing beans on Åland and how to cook them, they don't know. They also have to learn and to try new things and to innovate. And so I think everybody has to embark on this journey.
Well, like we said, you still have quite a few months to go. Is there something that you're hoping would be in your training program, or is there something you're fearing will be, or kind of hoping would not be in the training program? What are your expectations for the rest of the training program?
Wow, I'm not sure. I don't think it can be much worse than being vegan.
Well, you don't know what we have in store for you.
Yeah, perhaps like there was like a movement a few years ago. What's it called? It's called like when you eat things from the garbage bins.
Being like a free
dumpster diving.
Dumpster diving.
Yeah, that would be a problem. Perhaps eating. We call it skräpfisk in Swedish. I mean, fish that you don't normally eat. Like, for example, I don't know the words in English, but mört and brax and those things. Fearful of those things. What I'm hoping for, not sure. It's been interesting so far, so I'm just along for the ride and see what will come. So.
Yeah, I think the future direction will try to go into a more sort of reaching out and starting to build a community, because so far you've kind of been doing things on your own. You've been sort of experimenting with these different kinds of proteins and doing things in your own kitchen and all of that. But probably as we move ahead, we'll start to expanding and seeing how we can actually, or if we can grow this into a movement and get others involved. Obviously already now, because like I mentioned, you've been writing about your experiences and filming your experiences and all of that. So people they're already able to follow what's happening. But obviously we want people joining in and start to do the same things as you're now doing, and kind of start to spread the thinking and start to spread the identity of, hey, I'm a food citizen. So let's see what happens. Hopefully we'll get people on board. Is there still something that you're kind of wanting to say about the training program so far? We'll probably do a catch-up at some point later on, see how you've been progressing. But is there anything else that we haven't covered yet that you would like to highlight?
I'm not sure. I thought about that, how this training program has affected the way I eat and those kind of things. And my general reflection is that the food I have eaten has been more tastier and I think more healthy so far. and that's quite low cost as well. So it's like the training program is not putting any strain on my taste buds or health or bank accounts. So it's like these positive side effects of I think me being more healthy and discovering new types of food and getting away quite cheaply, especially this vegan challenge. I mean, you can cut your food costs tremendously by eating beans and lentils instead of meat. Actually, I mean, farmers, they give you these beans because they usually feed them to their cows. So it's like, they don't even like. It's not even worth the effort for them to ask for any money. So.
Okay. Well, that's an interesting sort of takeaway, that it's being an active food citizen is, well, while it takes a bit more effort, it pays off.
Yeah,
in
it's
many
rewarding.
sense.
I mean, you have to devote a little bit of effort and energy, but you get something in return as well.
Okay, I think that's a great takeaway, and I think we'll wrap things up here for now and probably come back later on to check in on how you're doing with your training program. So right now, thank you, Fredrik.
Thanks.